You are not stuck because your dreams are too big. You are stuck because your inner world keeps rewarding the version of you that was built to survive, not the version of you that is meant to lead. That is the part almost nobody says clearly. People tell you to think bigger, visualize harder, repeat stronger words, protect your energy, trust the timing, and stay positive. But if your reactions, your habits, your standards, and your emotional defaults are still loyal to the life you are trying to outgrow, then all that effort becomes a beautiful layer placed on top of the same old pattern. And that is why change can feel so confusing. You can want more with your whole heart and still keep recreating the same results. You can have ambition, intelligence, spiritual practice, and deep desire, and still watch your life move in circles. Maybe you get signs. Maybe you get moments. Maybe you get close enough to taste a different future. But somehow the old story returns, the old fear reappears, and the same reality pulls you back in. Here is the real shift. The problem is not that you do not want the new life enough. The problem is that your system still knows how to be the old you better than it knows how to be the new you. Think about a phone that keeps reconnecting to weak Wi-Fi, even when a stronger network is available. It is not choosing what is best. It is choosing what is familiar. That is how most people live. They say they want confidence, but reconnect to self-doubt. They say they want abundance, but reconnect to fear. They say they want love, but reconnect to protection. They say they want peace, but reconnect to chaos, because chaos feels known. And what is repeated becomes powerful. That is the hidden mechanism. Life often responds less to what you say you want, and more to what you repeatedly return to. This is why quick motivation does not create lasting transformation. It can lift your mood, but it cannot replace a deeply practiced identity. And identity is what shapes your choices when no one is watching, when nothing exciting is happening, when the results are not visible yet, and when your old coping style starts calling your name. That is where your future is either built or betrayed. Most people think the breakthrough will happen when they discover one more technique, one better affirmation, one stronger ritual, one perfect morning routine. But the deeper truth is that your life changes when your inner pattern changes, not when you become more inspired. When you become more congruent, not when you want it more. When you stop feeding what quietly fights it. Let us make this real. Someone says they want financial freedom. They listen to empowering content. They speak about overflow. They imagine their future. And they feel elevated for 20 minutes. But later that day, they avoid looking at their numbers, undercharge for their work, delay uncomfortable decisions, say yes to things that drain them, and speak like someone who expects life to squeeze them again. That is not a money issue. That is an identity issue. Or take someone who says they are ready for real love. They pray for depth, honesty, loyalty, and emotional safety. But when someone consistent shows up, they become suspicious. When communication is clear, they get restless. When they are seen deeply, they pull away. They do not have a love problem. They have a receiving problem. Again, the desire is real. But desire alone is not alignment. That is the mistake people keep making. They think intense desire proves readiness. It does not. Sometimes intense desire simply reveals intense internal conflict. The bigger the dream, the more it exposes the parts of you that still feel unsafe holding it. So the real question is not only what do you want? The real question is what inside you still treats that reality as unfamiliar, risky, or undeserved. That is a much more honest question. And honest questions change lives. At Quantum Secrets, this is where we go deeper than surface motivation. We are not interested in performing belief. We are interested in building internal precision. because your daily life is shaped by what your mind repeats, what your body expects, what your emotions normalize, and what your behavior rehearses. If those four are not telling the same story, your progress will stay inconsistent. You will move forward in bursts and then drift back to the old emotional address. This is why so many people mistake information for transformation. They know the language of growth. They can explain healing. They can quote powerful ideas. They can talk about becoming their highest self. But when pressure arrives, they still hand the steering wheel to the same fear, the same overthinking, the same insecurity, the same habit of seeking proof before committing. That is not because they are weak. It is because pressure reveals training. In difficult moments, you do not automatically become your wisest self. You become your most practiced self. And that means your future is not being decided by your best intentions. It is being shaped by your deepest repetitions. That is why this work has to become practical. If change stays abstract, it never stabilizes. You need a framework strong enough to hold you when your mood does not. Here is a better model. Stop asking, how do I make life give me what I want? Start asking, what kind of person would be able to carry this life well? That one shift changes everything. Because now, you are not obsessed with the prize. You are focused on the capacity required to hold it. If the future version of you would speak with more clarity, that is your work. If that version would stop apologizing for their value, that is your work. If that version would regulate before reacting, choose peace over panic, set firmer boundaries, recover faster after disappointment, follow through without drama, and stop chasing validation, then that is your work. This is where growth becomes measurable in a real way, not by signs, not by random emotional highs, but by evidence inside your character. And that is how real change gains momentum. Most people are trying to force a new chapter while still protecting the habits that wrote the old one. They want a different life without surrendering the emotional reflexes that keep creating sameness. They want better outcomes while still worshiping old comforts, but comfort can be expensive. Familiar patterns can quietly cost you years. You say you want expansion, but keep rehearsing hesitation. You say you want visibility, but keep rehearsing self-erasure. You say you want peace, but keep rehearsing urgency. You say you want stability, but keep rehearsing emotional extremes because intensity feels more alive than calm. This is why transformation is not only about addition, it is also about subtraction. You have to remove what keeps training you to be the version of yourself you no longer want to be. Remove the internal arguments you replay before anything even happens. Remove the stories that make delay mean failure. Remove the private language that keeps insulting your own future. Remove the conversations that normalize smallness. Remove the habits that numb you right before you need courage. Remove the environments that keep rewarding your old identity, because every repeated input becomes part of your emotional climate. And your emotional climate shapes your decisions more than your occasional inspiration ever will. Here is another example. Imagine two people building the same dream. One person wakes up every day asking, will this finally work? The other wakes up asking, how do I show up in a way that matches where I am going? One is scanning for proof. The other is practicing identity. One becomes emotionally fragile when results are delayed. The other becomes more refined. One is living in reaction. The other is living in alignment. Over time, those two people will not end up in the same place. Not because one wished harder, because one became internally organized, while the other stayed emotionally dependent on evidence. This is one of the biggest traps in personal growth. Constantly checking if life has changed can keep you attached to the version of you that still needs outside proof to feel steady. And that means the obsession with signs often strengthens the exact state you are trying to leave. You keep asking where it is, why it has not arrived, what it means, whether you are behind, whether the delay is a bad sign. But all those questions are still coming from the same identity, an identity that believes stability must be earned from the outside first. Yet the people who create the strongest shifts usually reverse that pattern. They become more grounded before the proof. They become more disciplined before the applause. They become more honest before the outcome. They do not wait for reality to give them permission to become clearer. They become clearer, and then reality begins to respond to that clarity over time. This is where emotional maturity becomes non-negotiable, because many people are not blocked by a lack of desire. They are blocked by a lack of capacity. The future they want requires emotional skills they have never built. It may require being visible without panic, resting without guilt, receiving without suspicion, leading without over-explaining, being loved without performing, earning more without feeling like they are betraying their past, staying calm when something good finally arrives, sustaining peace after a lifetime of tension. These are real capacities. And if they are missing, you can unconsciously reject the very future you keep talking about. So your work is not only to dream bigger. Your work is to become safer for your future to land inside. That is a different level of understanding, and it leads to a different strategy. Because once you see self-sabotage as protection instead of stupidity, you stop shaming yourself and start training yourself. You stop saying what is wrong with me and start asking what does my system think it is saving me from. That question can unlock years of confusion. Maybe procrastination is not laziness. Maybe it is fear of being seen. Maybe perfectionism is not excellence. Maybe it is fear of judgment wearing expensive clothes. Maybe indecision is not confusion. Maybe it is the avoidance of responsibility. Maybe emotional withdrawal is not wisdom. Maybe it is self-protection that no longer knows when to stop. Once you understand the hidden payoff of staying the same, change becomes more honest. Because now you can build a better kind of safety instead of clinging to old survival patterns and calling them personality. This is where practical application matters most. Let me give you a usable framework. First interruption, catch the old pattern in real time. Notice the familiar thought, the body tension, the urge to shrink, the need to rush, the impulse to overthink, the script you always run. Second, regulation. Slow your breathing. Relax your shoulders. Unclench your jaw. Widen the gap between the trigger and your response. Third, replacement. Ask yourself, what would the more grounded version of me do in the next 10 seconds? Not in theory, in practice. Fourth, repetition. Do it again tomorrow and the next day, and again when it is inconvenient. That is how the nervous system learns. That is how identity updates. That is how your future stops being a concept and starts becoming a pattern. This matters because your life is built from patterns far more than promises. One powerful weekend will not save you if Monday still belongs to the old identity. One breakthrough moment will not change everything if your daily language still humiliates your potential. One emotional high will not create peace if your body is addicted to tension. Lasting change is less dramatic than people think. It is quieter, more disciplined, more honest, more repeatable. It looks like keeping your word to yourself in small moments. It looks like not collapsing after a delay. It looks like refusing to turn one setback into a prophecy. It looks like choosing standards over impulses. It looks like becoming less available for emotional chaos, even when chaos once felt like home. And then there is the invisible middle. This is where most people lose heart. The old version of you is weakening, but the outer proof is not fully here yet. You are no longer who you were, but you cannot fully point to what you are becoming either. This season can feel empty if you misunderstand it, but often it is not empty at all. It is the season where your roots are deepening. It is the season where your reactions are being retrained. It is the season where your standards are becoming more durable than your moods. It is the season where life is testing whether your shift is real or just emotional. Anyone can feel powerful for a day. Anyone can make a dramatic declaration when energy is high. But can you stay aligned when no one is clapping? Can you keep your direction when the visible reward is late? Can you protect your standards in private? That is where transformation becomes believable. Not in the announcement, in the maintenance. Here is a perspective that can save you from years of frustration. The breakthrough is not always the moment life changes in front of you. Sometimes the breakthrough is the moment you stop needing visible movement in order to remain committed. Sometimes the breakthrough is when your inner world becomes less negotiable, when your peace is no longer up for debate, when your boundaries no longer disappear under pressure, when your self-respect no longer depends on being understood, when your direction stays intact even while the evidence is still forming. That is power. Quiet power. Real power. And that kind of power reshapes a life from the inside out. So if you have been wondering why things are not moving fast enough, ask a better question. Not what am I doing wrong? Ask what patterns am I still rewarding? Not why is life not changing? And ask where am I still practicing the old self? Not when will the result appear? Ask, can I become more stable before it does? Those are the questions that create results because they lead to ownership. And ownership changes everything. At some point, you have to stop trying to drag your future into a life still governed by old reflexes. You have to decide that the old emotional script no longer gets final authority. You have to stop calling your fear intuition, your hesitation timing, your avoidance peace, and your inconsistency authenticity. You have to become more truthful than that, more exact than that, more committed than that, because the life you want will not be built by occasional desire. It will be built by sustained congruence, by repeated inner order, by emotional strength that does not collapse the moment life gets quiet, and by choices that support your future even when your past feels loud. So here's the invitation. For the next 7 days, stop chasing dramatic signs and start tracking internal evidence. Catch every reaction that belongs to the old you and interrupt it. Practice steadiness instead of urgency. Practice clean decisions instead of emotional noise. Practice self-respect instead of self-negotiation. Practice speaking from the person you are becoming, not from the wound that has been narrating your life for years. Let those 7 days become proof that change does not begin when the world finally gives you something. It begins when you stop feeding what has been weakening you. And let this be the mark of Quantum Secrets. We are not here to sell escape. We are here to train embodiment. We are not here to decorate fantasy. We are here to build inner precision. We are not here to help you look transformed for a moment. We are here to help you become so internally clear, so emotionally steady, and so behaviorally aligned that your outer world can no longer keep mirroring the old version of you. Protect your standard. Refine your inner world. Let your daily choices become your signal. And remember this, your next reality does not start when life finally proves something to you. It starts the moment you stop rehearsing the identity that keeps recreating the old one. That is the path. That is the shift. That is Quantum Secrets.